the name of our show.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to The Large Glass. My name's Todd.
I'm Terri.
And this is our weekly show where we bring you a new artist live to talk to in the chat about their work. And hi.
Hi.
How's it going?
Yeah, it's going.
Not the question.
Not the question, but today is 2/22/22 on Tuesday.
Yeah.
So
and
we've got a bunch of twos.
And at 2:22
Yeah?
today,
Yeah?
I can't think of a single thing that happened. I was in class, so I completely missed it.
Yeah, I was at work.
So, yeah, I saw some interesting stuff about this whole thing. And
it's cool.
Mathematically, oh wait, we got people in the chat. Hold on a minute. So we've got Ben Hagenbush is here, John Park is here, Mom is here, Joseph Barbaccia is here. Welcome back, Joe. It's nice to have you again. Jamie's here. How's it going? Jamie, thank you for that Patreon support. You're awesome. We appreciate that. And 63 is here. Pumpkin Audrey's here.
Pumpkin Audrey, thank you for the brownies and everything
And
else
the
you
quiche. It's like...
And walking our baby.
There's Dave. Hi, Dave. Nice to see you. So we got some news to talk about, some things to kind of bring up and share.
Why, yes.
So we're going to be working with the Matheny School.
We are. We're actually going to be working with the Matheny Arts Access Program. It's a fantastic organization with the Matheny Medical and Education Center. And what we're going to be doing is they're inviting us in to take a little look at their Arts Access Program, where they facilitate art through artists and individuals with disabilities. So we are super excited about that.
It's a fantastic program. I'm really excited I'm going to be going up there. I'm going to be doing some filming, and we're going to bring that to you sometime in May. So it's definitely a go. We just don't have a date yet.
Yes.
But Jess Park is here. M Galleries is here.
Hey.
How's it going? If you guys haven't had a chance to go see M Galleries, either in Washington or any of their other locations, you have to go check out what they're doing. They are doing awesome stuff, so we love them. So look them up online, M Galleries. Carolyn Thau is here.
Hey, Carol.
David Backus is back.
Everyone's here.
You know, David, I got to tell you, I went on the Brownstone Arts website today to just kind of be like, to make sure that I didn't miss something, because I missed you. And, you know, so, but anyway, it's good to see you. It's nice to have you back. Yeah. I made a mistake last week on the show, and I wanted to apologize for that. When we were signing off, and 63, I know that you even said something to confirm what I was saying, but I said that this week's show was Don Cannell and Lisa Adler, and I just totally had my calendar in my head backwards. So it is not Don Cannell and Lisa Adler. This week is Josh Dorman, and we've been looking forward to Josh coming on the show for weeks and weeks, and I've been saying it, and it's been in the newsletter, and it's been like... And I don't know how I flubbed that one last week, but I did. So, yeah, 63. Sorry, but I'm telling you right now, 63, you're going to love tonight. You're going to love it. Don and Lisa are next week. So don't worry. They'll be here. So I apologize for that. You know.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
What are you going to do?
Last but not least, supporting our channel. So number one, thank you to everyone that has either supported via Patreon, supported via our website, or, you know, in any other way that you have supported us. We appreciate that, whether you've spread the word and told friends. I want to thank our moderators. I've never really done that on the show, maybe once or twice. So thank you to our moderators. We really appreciate having you. You're a big part of this.
Yes.
So yeah, so if you can, if you're here and you haven't followed yet and you're new to the show, please leave a follow. We'd love to see you. Again, we run a really, I think we run a pretty good show here. So definitely come back.
Yeah.
So now, it's still early. It's 8:05.
It is early.
What? We have to pour our drinks.
We do have to pour our drinks.
All right. I'll get on that.
So
what are you having tonight, Tara?
I'm going to drink some tea.
Oh, look at that. One Good King is back.
Thank you.
And he's throwing the gifted sub. One Good King, we've missed you.
Yes.
First of all.
Yes.
But thank you for all
Thank you
those
for
gifted
that.
subs. That's really nice. And they've gone out too. Let's see. Jamie Foster got one. And let's see. Marsolis got one. Carolyn Thau got one. Joseph Barbaccia got one. And Jess Park got one. So you guys are all now got a 1-month subscription. So that's awesome.
That's very cool.
Tonight's artist I met at the Vermont Studio Center in like I'm going to throw the guess out there. I believe it was 1994, if I'm not mistaken, or it might have been 96. And I know he's off in the background now thinking about when that was. And I know that Josh has been to Vermont Studio Center more than I have. I've only done 2 stints there. He's done more than that. So I'll just throw a date out there. We met in 1996, and we decided on an IPA for tonight. I've got the Bad Rooster IPA from Vermont. I'm not sure which IPA Josh has picked yet, but we'll ask him when he gets on here. So I'm going to pour that right now to kind of go with your
my tea.
Chamomile
tea. Herbal. Pretty.
We are on episode
Twinings.
78.
78.
78. We have done 78 consecutive shows.
78. Ain't it great?
You're awesome.
Yeah.
You've done this. I couldn't have done this show without you. You're awesome.
Same.
You guys are all awesome too. Thank you so much. Cheers.
Cheers.
Here's to another one.
Yeah.
Let us know what you're working on tonight in the chat. David says he misses us as well. We got some thanks going around for One Good King's generous donation. I love that. And all right.
All right.
So let's talk a little bit about what we're going to be talking about tonight, shall we?
Yes.
I mean, I met Josh at Vermont Studio Center. I said that already, but you seem to have some things to tell us about. You want to get...
So I met him last weekend. But I've got a great introduction. You're going to love tonight's show. Tonight's artist has been featured in numerous solo and group exhibitions, as well as publications like Bomb Magazine, Art News, Los Angeles Times, Time Out New York, The Village Voice, and on and on. New Yorker magazine has stated that Dorman constructs fantasy lands and visual puns, while the Paris Review stated that the paintings evoke a state of basic contradiction that has a way of getting under your skin. He is
that sounds familiar.
It does.
Oh shoot, I forgot to put the curtain up.
Oh no.
I moved over. Josh, just hang out. Terry's got a long way to go with this one.
I got a couple more things to say. He's represented by several galleries located in either London, Seattle, or New York. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Josh Dorman.
Hi, Josh. Don't forget to unmute, buddy. You're still muted there. So, how's it going?
Good. I knew I would forget that.
Everybody
good.
does.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate that. So we've been excited to talk to you, and we've been kind of digging through the most vast catalog of work. And I think lately I've been saying that to some recent artists, because we've been having artists on the show that just seem to have more and more and more work. And your website is brilliant. It's got so many brilliant pieces. I don't know where you find the time, but I'm thrilled to talk about this work with you. Let's see. I like your leading question you always kind of run with.
We kind of went in on this together.
Yeah.
Because usually we just start asking artists a question here or there, but we know something about you. Usually the audience doesn't. So what we started doing was asking artists to describe their work in what it is that you do, just off the bat.
Yeah, if you could generalize about it and just kind of say, well, my art does this or looks like this.
Okay. I can try to do that. Wow, every time I have to talk about my work or write about my work or write an artist statement, it's kind of as if I have never figured out anything that I do. So that part of what I would say is that the main thing is that it's not describable in words. I always kind of start every talk that I've ever done with that George Brock quote, the only thing of value in art is that which cannot be explained. So I like to start with that.
I love that.
Yeah.
Because I do have a lot to say about the work, but it almost all comes after the making of the work. The figuring out what it is that I do. In a nutshell, I for over 20 years have been using antique collage materials and water-based inks, acrylic, and resin in recent years. And I layer, I kind of was thinking about it a little bit like the way, not to compare, but the maybe apocryphal story of Michelangelo talking about finding the statue, the figures in the stone. I start by laying down a lot of information, visual information, maps, diagrams, all stuff from pre-photography era textbooks, player piano scrolls. I can talk about later where that originated, but I build a surface of stuff and then I find the painting in it. I kind of excavate and add and subtract until I build a world. What we're looking at on the screen are very recent series of portraits that are kind of a new thing for me, but that's what I'm excavating in that work.
And, you know, I put the newer ones up first in the slideshow simply because it gives us a sense of what you're up to right now. And then I'd like to go back in time a little bit to kind of see how you got there. And, you know, I know you sent us some great shots of the studio and some of the books that you pull from. So definitely want to get there when we can. I did notice that Alan Wexler showed up in the chat and said, sorry, I'm running late. Hi, Alan.
That's okay.
It's good to see you as usual. So yeah, and I really am interested in this kind of way in which the cutout work or the existing work or the antique work, or however you want to sort of label the stuff you bring that's already existed, functions with the paint. Like how you make decisions around, you know, and I know that these things are probably happening automatically or intuitively, or when you're in this kind of zone. I know that, you know, asking if you have a plan is the wrong question to ask, but I think our viewers are interested in how that sort of functions for you.
Yeah, I mean, I often have a sketch, a thumbnail sketch, sometimes fairly elaborate, especially for larger works. I'm maybe unusual in that I work from 4 inches to about up to 10 feet scale. So on large panels, I'll have a pretty developed sketch and idea of the composition and roughly what it's about, some of the themes, and mostly just the structure, because without any structure I would go crazy. With some of the small works I do start with no structure, but with larger works I have a plan. I often, this is one you just put in called 1028, which I can explain later, but that's like a 6 or 8 foot wide painting, and I spent over 2 years on that piece. It began at McDowell Colony in 2019.
God.
And it went through so many different phases. So even while I knew the basic idea, the composition, the theme was very simple in a way, was inside and outside. On the left side is inside, on the outside is, but you're always looking from multiple vantage points, looking underwater, above water, indoors, outdoors, up and down. There's never one vantage point. But this piece went through so many iterations and was almost, you know, abandoned at certain points. It's a huge struggle. So while I have a sense of the structure, so many things changed along the way.
That's, you know, and that's something, I don't know where I found it, but online somewhere I found this, it was in an interview with you, and there was a time lapse of a painting that showed where it began and like 7 or 8 iterations and where it ended up. And they were, at one point it got really bright and colorful, and by the time it got to the end, it was very dark. A huge change. So that as a process to me, and allowing that much sort of flexibility from the point you start at, to me really shows that the creative process is churning with you, you know. And I'm really interested in that too.
Yeah. I mean, you know, some of the things I think about to why I use the collage, why I go to the antique materials, is partly to distance myself from myself, to have pre-existing information that takes me out of here and now that is literally someone else's handiwork. So they're diagrams, they're sometimes really clunky diagrams from old medical textbooks,
They're
or
so great though.
you know, how to kind of things. I have books of all kinds, but I use those materials to kind of distance myself from knowing what I'm doing. So I can respond really freely. And it's often, you know, it's often a very formal decision, you know, the shape of one thing, the shape of a machine, a human-made machine part compared to an organic, you know, piece of coral from a naturalist book from 1920 or whatever. Those things just spark my imagination. And I don't want to explain what they're about. I often learn from what people see, and I notice things after the fact. I mean, clearly there's always a conflict of humans and nature. You know, are we part of nature? Are we destroying nature? There's always that conflict, the man-made, the natural.
Right. I love this idea. I'm sorry, I'm doing my thing now, where I'm just
okay.
like I'm gonna go.
Yeah, go for it.
I love this idea of, number one, the distancing yourself from what you know by bringing in these other things, but at the same time, this element of surprise that as you leaf through a text, an antique text that's got illustrations in it, how the turn of a page reveals an image that all of a sudden it's like, I know exactly what I want to do with this, or I feel this in a piece, or it just sets the bells off.
But do you feel that, or do you just kind of start working intuitively? You start finding images, then you put them in, and then you just kind of let that hand-eye feedback start happening and weaving your images that way?
Yeah, it's both. It's all of that. I may literally walk over to the bookshelf with an idea of taking, you know, I need a like in one painting I'll have a cage form, and then I'll think I need a rib cage to play off that metal cage. I want to, and in going to get that book, I'll stumble over a different book, or I'll be flipping through to find the rib cage, and I'll see something else, a different part of anatomy that will trigger a whole other tangent. So I just give myself over to those tangents, and that's why pieces can take forever, because I may go down a wrong path and have to then layer over it. This piece you're showing right now, I mean, again, like tangents. This was a project I worked on for a year, 2 years, for the Archives of American Art Journal, where I was invited to go to the archives in DC and pick anything I wanted to build a body of work around. And I chose this Charles Birchfield note.
Oh, nice.
That he had sent to his sister after his mother died and his sister died, a different sister, within months. And he did this little watercolor. It's right in the center of that painting. It's a little bouquet of milkweed and sumac. And so I made about 6 paintings that integrated, weaved in that image. It was really powerful. I just read hundreds and hundreds of his letters and journal entries, and felt like I was really communing with him. Not to say that he's one of my favorites. I'd be happy to make a Birchfield, but I felt like I was touching souls with him a little bit.
Oh, I love that. He's a favorite of mine too. Pumpkin Audrey in our chat is like, she's like, first of all, she was, Josh, what are you drinking? And 2, Josh,
this is my IPA from upstate, the Woodstock Brewery. It's called Baby Dragon.
Oh, nice. I like that. And she also wants to know if you have a science background.
Oh gosh, no, but I'm flattered. I love all of these bodies of information that I don't understand. And I feel like as an artist, I can get away with using them however I want. Botany, I'm obsessed with fractal formations.
Yes.
Yet I couldn't write down the equation of a fractal, but I'm just obsessed with the repeated growth patterns, spiral growth patterns. It's kind of like, well, yeah, many of the artists I love, Paul Klee especially, he was probably much more studied than I am, but I love looking at that stuff and using the forms that come out of it without fully understanding the science of it.
But that is so spot on in terms of, I mean, this is one of the things I love about being an artist is, and it sounds, when I say the words get away with it, because I'm going to use your words, you're like, we can get away with this. But it's more than that, because what we're doing, I think, when we experience this wonder with a space outside of our own field, whether it be science, whether it be it's usually in the sciences I've found, but maybe it's systems of organization, you know, whatever the case may be, it's the type of thing where we kind of like we have a certain level of visual investment in that thing, right? That excites us. The wonderment is kind of built out of both a curiosity and maybe a fear of not knowing, like in that science thing. Like I know full well if someone says to me, "Oh, really? You're using mold spores or viruses in your visual imagery? You don't know what that means." And I'll be like, "Well, yeah, you're right. I don't. But I love what they look like, and I feel like they contribute to my visual aesthetic."
Right.
So yeah, I get that, and I really love that you say that about your work, because this is the type of work, what you're doing, that always. I can't imagine how many times you get approached where people say, "So, tell me what this painting means." Is that like a regular thing for you?
Yeah. And thank you for not asking that.
I don't intend to.
I mean, I like to try to analyze them afterwards as if I'm somebody seeing the painting for the first time. That is kind of how I think about it. I mean, just before I'll touch on two things you said. One, like this painting, which is about 5 feet wide, called "How This Will End," which is a lyric from a Sufjan Stevens song. And many works in the last few years, the base layer that I put down, I haven't worked on a blank canvas or a white piece of paper for 20 some years. So the first thing I did with a bunch of these is put down layers of player piano scrolls from 1930s, 40s, which have these perforations. And they, you know, like right there, it's a system of music because like air blows through and makes the keys play and stuff. But it's also, it's a rhythm that's pre-established that I can work with. It's a visual noise. It reminds me of DNA strands. It reminds, or reading code, DNA code, reminds you of old punch cards. So I like to have these systems that are visual systems, but I, again, don't understand exactly what they do.
Right.
And this painting, I mean, I guess what I want in a painting is for there to be so much information. I'm a maximalist, you would say. So much information and so many narratives, multiple narratives, that you could never see it all. Or that you could look at it for years and years and never find everything. Yeah. And it'll come up at some point. Bosch and Bruegel are some of my heroes for that. The hyper specificity, beautiful atmospheric painting, but also very detailed, tiny little figures. And that's another reason I use collage materials, because tiny, just tiny marks and figures that can be a fraction of a centimeter.
One of our viewers, we call him 63, he's said a couple of times here, he says, like Bosch and Blake combined. And then in another one, maybe some Escher thrown in. Yes. And then another artist, friend of ours from Chicago, Jamie Foster, says, amazing AF. I think we all know what AF is. Amazing AF work. I feel like I've seen your work somewhere while living in Seattle from 2007 to 2012. Did you have a show out there?
I do show it with Copland Del Rio in Seattle. Every now and then they'll have some of my work.
Nice.
They moved from LA. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Well, that's nice. This one was another one that took over a year, and this was it's hard to see in this, but I was using layers of resin. I would punch holes through the wood panel, build kind of little caves, and then pour resin. Like about that blue pool has probably 6 layers of resin where I would pour resin, collage and paint, pour more resin, collage and paint.
So there's depth and physical dimensionality when
There's
you get
physical depth. That all began right after the 2016 election. I don't know. You can analyze that how you will. I needed to escape.
We were all deeply
new kind
depressed.
of space.
Yeah.
And it built from there. I'm kind of moving away from that right now, but
right.
Yeah.
I was going to move on to the next one. You sounded like you started to say something.
Well, I was going to ask how long a composition like this took to render, but then you had said it.
Yeah,
right
that one was probably close to a year. I'm always working on at least 5 to 10 paintings at a time. Some are small, some are large, and I can set them aside and go back to them.
Okay.
But the big ones often take a year, about a year.
And that was going to be my question, because I'm going to tell everybody right now, one thing you definitely want to copy down is I'm going to pop up Josh's website on the screen right now, which is joshdorman.net. If you go look at the galleries tab on this website, you're going to see more paintings that, first of all, most of these paintings, a lot of these paintings are big. And Josh is telling us they take them, oh, this one took me over a year. And I'm like, I've never seen so much brilliant, full, rich work come out of us. I mean, I'm gonna put this on me now. I'm gonna make this about me. You're making me feel really inadequate here. It's amazing. You're amazing. Oh, Alan Wexler wants to know if I have a detail that I might show.
I don't know if we have any details.
I can get. I'm gonna try. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna zoom
close.
in on one. So, Alan, I will answer that request shortly, I promise.
Yeah, that is a great question and request, because even in photographs, that's why the video documentary that's on my website was useful. It's really hard to see the detail. I mean, part of my goal, like a fractal, is to pull you in. Hopefully there's enough structure from across the room, but to pull you in that you really need to put your nose against it to see all the stuff going on.
Right.
And I guess my goal, I always say this when I see my own shows, is like for me to have forgotten what was in there. Like that when that happens, that makes me happy, because there is a lot of stuff and time passes, and it's when it can be surprising to me, like, oh, I forgot I put that little bug. This one's called Trapped in Amber.
I love that.
And they're like little bugs in the resin.
Joseph Barbaccia is asking, how many hours a day in the studio, Josh, on average?
Well, I mean, we can talk about real life if you want. I could pretend I have no other life, but I am also a drawing and painting teacher several days a week at a private school. And I work, every free minute. I really depend on my summers to dive in deep, but I can, fortunately, because my work, it's kind of like my brain, it jumps around a lot. I can compartmentalize and work little bits here and there. I can, and I've managed to get pretty good about pushing through even times when I don't feel positive or creative or inspired, and just fiddle around with stuff. So that's partly why I'm able to make a lot of work.
Right. I'm going to try and zoom in. So can we talk a little bit, I mean, and I'm not necessarily talking from a definitional or meaning standpoint, but I love the theme of this pool that happens in this work. And I'm going to try and get in close for Alan on this. I'm going to like bring this up to size if I can. You're going to see the bounding box around this. I apologize. But in order to do this, I've got to kind of give you the peek behind the curtain a little bit. So let me just kind of push this around if I can. So we're going to try. This might not be the best one for the detail, but there's some stuff going on down here.
There is. That that's a fairly small piece. That's probably just like a foot square.
Oh, no kidding.
And yeah, that pool is a recurring theme, pools and nets, that started way back, really around after 9/11, and the floods in New Orleans. It started with a particular work where at the end of this long horizontal painting, there was a pool that kind of contained everything that we bury and try to bury or forget or lose to history or memory. I just think I don't fully know, but it's a very loaded image to me. It's also, I love the fact that you can look across, you're looking across at like a cross section of water.
Yeah.
But you're also looking down into it. And especially with the resin pools, you're looking literally into it.
Well, this kind of goes towards what I said earlier about wonder, which seems like a really, like I say that sometimes and I'm like, what are you talking about? But there's this notion of wonderment and this idea of this curiosity. I mean, when I was a kid, I loved this idea of seeing those, like in an encyclopedia, the cross section of the ground that maybe a groundhog or a gopher dug down into the ground, or an anthill as it's exposed. So seeing both the tangible above the ground world and at the same time what's below the water and what's, you create these scapes where, not only are we able to see so much stuff because there's so many things going on in it, but we're also able to see so many dimensional elements to it. They're just like, they're fascinating. They draw you in and they hold you. Like I want to spend hours with these works. I love that. Alan Wexler wants to know if you have a show coming up.
I have 6 pieces in a show upstate in Kingston, New York, opening next Saturday.
Oh, nice.
For about a month. That's it's a group show of collage artists, probably I think 15 or 18 artists, all collage, which I don't always, I call myself a painter, even though I use a lot of collage.
Right.
Anyway, I'm in this collage show at the Lockwood Gallery. And then my next solo show probably will be in the fall at Ryan Lee Gallery.
Oh, nice.
In the city.
Great.
But yeah, I love what you said. I love those diagrams. I used to stare at those life nature books.
Yeah.
And if you dig through, like if you looked at 50 of my paintings, you'd see literally I'm collaging some of those cross sections of an anthill or whatever it is, that inside outside. And I also should mention, like I'm obsessed with looking into water, and I grew up fishing.
I'm gonna get another water one while you're telling us this.
I have dreams probably once a week or every 2 weeks, certainly, of being in water or looking down into water or hovering above water, with creatures. A lot of, and I would never say that I'm painting my dreams. I actually, that's sort of, if it arrives at a place that feels like a dream, I'm okay with that. But I kind of rebel against the surrealist connection in a way. But I do have these dreams of looking into water and seeing these creatures moving around, and so I'm obsessed with that.
Yeah, that's actually, I really like that. And there's this kind of that thought just totally walked out of my head just then, because I'm sitting here and I'm both looking at a couple of really good comments. So John Park in the comments says, there's a lot of architecture represented in the work. Can you talk about your interest in that and where that comes from?
That's a really good question.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is the collage sources and playing with scale. I just love messing with scale. So like that building on the left there is probably a diagram either from a patent book from 1920 or like a engineering textbook. And it's probably showing a machine or some like filter or some machinery, but I'm turning it into a skyscraper essentially. And I love messing with scale that way, scaling up and scaling down. And I guess I have so many books that I'm kind of a book hoarder, and none of them are super valuable if there's any bibliophiles out there.
Right.
But I cut them up. And architecture kind of is the essential stand-in for human creation, positive and negative.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, that's actually something I've talked about before, and I'm so glad you said that. I feel like you and I are on the same page in some way. But so I'm sorry, I probably interrupted you there, but yeah, I like that architecture, number one, deals with the scale, but that stand-in for human creation in these also. It becomes like a placeholder for the figure, even though the figure isn't always necessarily present. They are in this case, in statuesque kind of forms, but it kind of becomes this replacement for that human being. Ben Hagenbush says something that leads me to my next question. He says, all the stories one could create by looking at these paintings. And I love this notion of narrative. And I also like that you said in an interview that you're more drawn to writers than other visual artists, like at a residency, for example. Let's talk about that a little bit, because I love that. I love that idea.
Yeah, I mean, not to diss any of my fellow visual artists.
Yeah, they're all abandoning you right now.
I mean, I do find, especially like at a residency, there is often more, I don't know, it depends, but artists can have so many different ideas in visual language that it can be difficult to find common ground. Whereas, I mean, I would say the writers have gravitated to my work as much as I've gravitated to theirs. We kind of find each other because like one of the first ones was, oh gosh, I'm gonna forget his name. It'll come to me.
Okay.
Anyway, they find that there's narrative in the work, but it doesn't have to be nailed down to one story. And so I've connected with writers over the years, or they've commissioned pieces, or we've worked together. I've also worked with composers. On Anna Klein is one in particular. I did animations to her classical music. There's something about the specificity of the narrative and the open-endedness of the meaning.
Yeah.
That
well, can I try and interject a thought on this? Because I've got an idea here that I'm interested in hearing your feedback on, and that's this. I think when we think about narrative, especially in terms of writing, we think about linearity. We think about, and if we think about your painting in respect to that, there's this idea, like say in Renaissance painting, where the eye moves through a piece in a particular way, whatever the visual cues are that move us through that piece, there's a kind of linearity, for better or for worse. But in your work, it's not like that. We still have beautiful visual cues and compositional elements that pull us and push us through it. However, the narrative kind of exists all at once, and not necessarily in a particular line that's got a beginning, middle, and end in a sensible or a coherence that is logical. However, we can all recognize that it's there.
Right. Yeah, that's very well said. Yeah, I mean, I like, and this is why I think it's interesting to look at Bosch, like from Bosch or Bruegel, from our perspective, where they were, I read something comparing them, saying they were different than surrealists because they thought they were painting reality, which is interesting.
Yeah.
So there's a lot, you can look at it endlessly. They knew what each little scene of, the weird, musical notes on somebody's butt or whatever it is, half human, half animal, meant something specific to them. Maybe it represented one sin or another.
Right.
I love the idea that I don't know what they're about.
Right.
And for me, and so when I create these little stories or put things together, I'm kind of trusting that there's a story I don't know, but it's real. So I want it, so it's incredibly, it couldn't be more specific, but I also don't know what it means. For the most part, there's like, we're looking at this one, I can tell you these horses drowning in the lake. Can you see that?
Yes.
that came from, so when I'm working, I often listen to things that occupy my left brain, like podcasts and things. And this, I think, was a This American Life story about, which turned out to be not true, but it was a story that had echoed for decades about a little village, I think in Russia, where there was a fire and all the horses fled this town and ran into a lake. And because of the nature of the lake, that you need particles to freeze water, all the horses instantly froze in place as in the positions they were in, in the ice, which was such a haunting image. It turns out they did this. Oh no, it was Radiolab, because then they did the science.
That sounds like a Radiolab story.
Yeah, they did the science because ice does need particles to crystallize. That couldn't have been true, but who cares? It was just such a fantastic story that I just, I wanted to make that.
So then you find yourself immersed in these stories you're listening to, and even possibly bringing some of those components into your decision making.
Yeah. Huh. I mean, it may be very tangential or not as literal as that, but
right.
Yeah.
There is, as teachers, which you and I both are, I don't want to knock academia completely, but I think sometimes academia messes with our visual world as artists, in that we've been conditioned to believe there have to be these connections. So when we make a reference to Renaissance painting, we think about signs and symbols in Christian art, where the white lily that's placed perfectly in the foreground has a direct meaning to this element of Christianity, and the dog in the foreground, and et cetera, et cetera. And so those elements, along with the visual cues, allow us to read the story of whatever. I mean, Renaissance painting is illustration, right? In your case, you're sort of embracing of the fact that you don't know and don't really care to know what these things necessarily mean in that capacity. I would imagine it gets exhausting after a while, because it's like when you put these things out in the world, having to remind everybody, well, wait a minute, come to this fresh, come to this without all the academic baggage.
Wow. You're so on the money. I think as artists, we all question what we do all the time. I have tried to impose meaning many times. It's not like I have no meaning. There's like this conveyor belt dumping junk into a body of water. Of course, that relates to how we're destroying the earth and global warming and sea level rise, all that stuff. But I learn from other people who tell me, some people see very specific narratives and they'll tell me the story.
Yeah.
And I love that. But I also think we don't allow for that lack of knowledge, that might be the most fascinating thing we have, like why people feel so needful to have things spelled out to them.
Right.
I mean, it's you could extend this to the state of the world we're in. It's like or politics.
Yeah.
There's so much mystery, and it doesn't need to be explained. In fact, to me, the most provocative stuff is not explainable. It's open-ended.
Right, because I feel like once we get to that point where it's almost as if we're trying to solve the problem, right? To us, if we don't understand what it means, that's a problem. And I don't agree with that at all. I'm saying that that's what our culture sort of commands. And so we set out to say, well, what is it? That's the first question. What is it? And in your work, I love this notion that a pure visual experience, that I may extrapolate some narrative from here and there, but then I might change that later. And this notion that you say, I want you to be able to come to this as many times as you can and find something new. Number one says to me, wow, this is almost like infinite potential. If I had a story that directly related to this, I've cut that off. I've boxed that into this one thing and then it's over. This to me is so much more promise than that.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's reminding me of like, I mean, so there have been writers I've connected with or who have bought my work or related to my work, but also there are authors that I go to who do that same thing, like Italo Calvino, like Invisible Cities. If anyone listening doesn't know that book, you should read it. Or Richard Brautigan, or poet Lee Young Lee, are all authors who can do that, who tell stories, but you still don't know where you are. You know, you still, you're shifting time and space and breaking all those things constantly within a paragraph, within a sentence, and it can be very disorienting.
Right. I'm sure.
And I know I had Sarah Walker come to my school. We were talking about how we both put more into our work, rather than paring it down to, like you're saying, that essence of meaning. And there are people I've seen them come into my shows and look around the room and walk out, because some brains can't handle that, and that's okay. Sometimes I can't either. Sometimes I want just like Morandi or something boiled down to its most beautiful essence.
Right.
But that's where, I mean, I guess the older I get, the more I accept that I don't think my work is like about my identity or messages I have, but I have kind of accepted it's a reflection of how my brain works, that it is just so many pieces. And I think that's why the collage has lent itself well.
Yeah, because I mean, in a lot of ways, the brain is a fragmentation of all those things, and it reconstitutes those things in many different ways. There's a ton of stuff coming up in the chat right now that I think we should go down that. Jamie Foster says, I love your poems gallery on your website. I get a very Salvador Dali feel from these. Joseph Barbacci is talking about the viewer can provide the story. 63 says, I love the unknown approach. It's, again, so antithetical to the current pedagogy of art instruction, meaning college art instruction, and that we have to know everything. That's why it's called mystery. Jamie Foster says, I love that you allow open interpretation to your own work. As an abstract painter, I can very much relate. Art should be defined from feelings and emotions by the viewer. Boojaz, who's here and says, Josh's work reminds me of a postmodern Hieronymus Bosch. We were talking about Bosch a little bit earlier. 63 says something interesting, and I'm curious about this author with you, Josh, because he's a favorite of mine, but Jorge Luis Borges. He says Borges for utter confusion.
I do love Borges. I haven't read him in many years, but yeah.
These have a very sort of the Library of Babel, a couple of his stories, these kind of, remind me of.
Definitely.
And then Joseph Barbaccia says, I look for a story in these works because of the use of illustrations that identify with words. That's an interesting point. They're almost the elements in these that sort of birth the need for the word, right? Somehow.
Yeah. I think that's true. For many, many years, I wouldn't allow any humans into my paintings. There would be evidence of humans. There would be, tilled fields and felled trees and crumbled cities. But then, I found a way to have humans, like in this one. This is a tiny piece that's like 8 inches.
Oh, really?
That little guy in the center is from a patent design book from 1920s or 30s for a little toy, probably a little toy. I can't read the text there. So I had to find ways to incorporate figures that were just enough like stand-ins, like clunky, not quite real. So now I allow them to appear now and then.
You had a question you were about to ask.
Well, I was going to ask if this was more of a detail, because it looked like it was clipped a little funny.
Right. It's a good one to show because it almost functions as a detail because it's only about this big. It's like 6 inches. So you can see a lot of the, texture. And and my goal is always to have the viewer not quite know what is hand drawn or painted and what is collaged.
Yeah, the integration that you create is so well done. And I know that sometimes when you place one of these, I'll call them objects for lack of a better word, but you place the pre-made object into the work, and I think that then warrants the use of paint in a particular way. And you don't know what that is going in, but all of a sudden it says, okay, now I require this. And then maybe the addition of that paint then also calls to another object or pre-made thing that exists that then goes in. But ultimately that kind of, I think that kind of infinite loop that you get stuck in where you're building and building and building and building really creates this integration where, yeah, I lose sight of the fact that it's a collage. It now becomes this other thing that's really a whole.
That's good to hear.
Alan Wexler says Max Ernst comes to mind. That's a
yes.
a really
He's
great
probably of the surrealists my favorite one.
Yeah.
He and Andre Masson. I tend to, in fact, that show, I went a few times to the show at the Met, the Surrealist show, and I guess I resist the illustrationiness of surrealism of some surrealists, and I think Ernst, who used frottage and other stuff to like discover the forms, or Masson with dripping and stuff. There's, for me, the art I love. I guess I could boil it down to the art I love most feels like it was discovered in the process of making it.
Yeah.
For the artist.
Right.
And that, to me, that's, you're seeing that magical process. Like, he found it, he scratched some stuff and saw a figure, saw a creature.
That's also interesting because I'm gonna really go for a stretch here. I'm gonna really make a leap here. But in literature, when we read, it's a slow process of discovery as we turn page by page and the narrative unfolds. And there is a process of discovery in reading a text. In a painting, it could be that there's the single image that all appears at one time. But in terms of the process, that discovery then relates back to this notion that it's sort of time-based and we move through it piece by piece by piece. And maybe the interest in writing, and I'm trying to get into your head here now, but maybe the interest in writing has to do with this idea that they're similar in that way.
Yeah, that's really true there. And I guess I want that to be visual, to see that things were discovered in time, over time, and altered. One element was altered because of another. You do see it all at once, but you also, I would hope, can't see everything that's happening.
Well, that's what I mean. Yours are unique in that way. Like, they don't have that you can see it all at once quality. There was another artist we had on a show a while back that reminded me of this a little bit, named Mupan.
Yes.
Yeah, you read my mind. Yeah. I don't know if you know Mupan's work.
I don't.
Oh, you should really look at him.
There's a lot of similarities, just not directly, but like with palette and some of the epic. There's some kind of epic feel to it.
And these massively populated fields of things all happening at once. They're like a delight in that you can spend hours in them and never see all of it.
Indeed.
Oh wow. I'll look at that.
Yeah, he'd be a good one. There's a couple more I want to keep going. We're not even close to everything I've got on this. One thing you all definitely want to do is if you're on Instagram, you want to get out there and you want to find Josh on Instagram, Josh Dorman Art. Follow him. He's got great things on there. I know the website is a great place to go, but at least Instagram, it's an active thing. You'll see it all the time. Definitely go see that. There's some more comments coming in. Both 63 and Jamie Foster are talking about Dali. They're going back and forth about Salvador Dali, although I wonder if that's a little bit more of the illustrative side of things for you, Josh. Is that right?
Yes. I mean, he was one of the first artists I loved when I was a kid.
I think all of us did.
And Escher.
Yeah.
I have over the years moved away from him because I just don't relate to the meticulous realism of it feels like an illustration of a dream rather than being actually in the weirdness of a dream to me. But it's okay. Many people have made that connection, and obviously there's something related.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. The meticulousness or the illustration of a dream rather than, because a dream,
It is true.
right?
Yes.
A dream would never have the clarity of a Dali
No,
painting.
never.
Right. That's how, or Magritte. I mean, while they do something very cool, obviously, but it's too tangible for me. My dreams are really totally bizarre and fractured and morph and change time and space, and that's more what I'm trying to do.
Right. Right. Yeah, 63 says he's a young artist, which is interesting. Carolyn Thou says, love your webpage, now following on Instagram.
Oh, thank you.
And we are coming down to the end of our hour. We're closing in on 8:57. So you said you have shows coming up. When is the solo show coming up, the one person?
It will be the fall. I haven't gotten the exact
confirmation
date,
yet.
September or October, I'm guessing.
Okay.
And that would be at Ryan Lee in New York.
We're looking forward to that, for sure.
Oh, and I'm in something in Baltimore, my hometown, a 3-person show, if anyone's from Baltimore. That's in the end of March.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
And they're starting to fly in now, so people are saying, Josh, are you a doomsdayer? Feel like we're living in the winter of our discontent, because I feel
what's really interesting is when the without getting too into the state of the world and politics and things, when the pandemic hit, it was almost like I had been making these apocalyptic
something's happening to
with
your
like
mic.
hovering virus forms and crumbling cities, and that it almost felt redundant. So in the last little bit, I've been, maybe shifting, hopefully a little away from that. I guess I like this term joyful apocalypse. It's pretty bad. It's pretty bad, but there's also humor in it, I hope.
The joyful apocalypse.
Yes.
That's perfect.
That is.
And, I get it. I mean, we've gone through hell for so long, and I feel like, your work has, it's in there, but it pulls out of there. It's, it's in and around that. I could see you moving away from that.
I think the portraits are a way I'm doing that now. This is one behind me in progress.
Yeah.
And they're like, just so like, what makes a face, what makes a head, and it's dissolving, it's coming together. You'll see a different face than the next person. But that's so that's one way I'm moving away from the apocalypse.
I love that. Let's see. Thanks, TNT. Always a great time. From 63, Alan Wexler says, so glad I tuned in. Joseph Barbacci, the hour goes so fast. Yes, it does. Pumpkin Otter says, Josh, such a pleasure to meet you. Memory Vessel says, Baltimore, because Memory Vessel's got some roots down there. She's wondering where in Baltimore.
It's called Current Space.
It's
like these young people have started this kind of alternative space, putting together shows. They have music there. So it's called Current Space, downtown Baltimore.
Nice. And Scultore's been here the whole time. He says, great hearing Josh talk about his work. Good to see you, Jim. Mom wants to know, when is the Kingston show?
That opens Saturday.
Nice.
Like from 3 to 7, and it's up for a month.
Nice.
Cool.
Nice.
Lockwood Gallery.
Yeah, the texts are flying by here in the chat. M Gallery says, thank you very much. Jamie Foster says, joyful apocalypse. I love it. Let's see. John Park really enjoyed Josh's work. Thanks as always, TNT. You got it, John. Thank you. Ben Hagenbush says, Josh, I very much enjoyed looking at your work tonight. Vast in detail and color. David Backus says, great show to return to. So everybody's loving the work. Josh,
sure.
thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
That was really fun.
Yeah, it was really good talking to you. We're definitely coming to the show. I don't know if we can make Kingston, but we'll definitely be at the one in New York. So all right, man. Good to see you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We will definitely talk to you.
Tuning in.
Definitely talk to you soon, Josh. All right.
Okay.
Take care. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, everybody. And there we have our text that I forgot to take off the screen like I always
that's
do.
okay. You can still go check out that website.
Go to artaccessspace.org. But Josh Dorman's
Oh
work
my God,
is just
gorgeous.
like, I mean, my
Epic.
God.
Yeah.
I will say this. I in there on the wall, not far from here, I have a tiny little painting of his that I bought in 1996 or 7 from a show in New York. It was actually, I realized this, it was the first piece of art I ever collected from a gallery, like, you know, from a gallery that was not like one I was associated with, whether it was like a school gallery or something like that. It was the first real piece of art I bought from a gallery, and I've hung it on my wall forever.
Yeah.
So that was one of the reasons I really enjoyed revisiting him. And his work has changed immensely in all that time.
Yeah.
But-
Well, that's always great, seeing the progression and seeing how it evolved. So
Yeah. And you know, I think this is a perfect example of the type of work, if you're looking to collect work, I mean, maybe you're going to go out there and buy a 5 by 6 foot canvas. I don't know. But I think Josh's work is very accessible and attainable, and amazing to look at. So this is an idea for you that if you want to add a nice piece to your collection, this is a great way to go. So anyway, I'm glad we went with the IPA.
Yes.
This was tasty.
Went with the tea.
All kinds of stuff coming up in here. Thanks, you guys. Your comments are so great. Mom's like, I'm gonna steal it. Yeah, go ahead and try. They are all real art, Todd. I know, actually, Memory Vessel, that painting hangs directly above your husband's painting that he made for your wedding. So there's a connection there. Anyway, listen, episode 78, Josh Dorman, go check out his work. We love this guy. And we think you're all awesome too. If you have not followed us yet, please leave a follow. We've got many great artists coming, including Don Cannell and Lisa Adler next week. I promise. They're out in White
Episode
Sands.
79.
They're out biking in White Sands.
Yeah.
Right now, having a good time.
All right.
Nice job. Cheers to all of you.
Cheers to you.
And we'll see you next week. Thanks for joining in. Thanks, everybody. Take care. Cheers.
All right.